In taking economic development, it has become apparent that there are so many other factors that can affect a country's economy besides trade, exchange rates, interest rates, and other monetarily focused factors. In order for a country to economically develop and succeed, there are many goals that need to be achieved within the country. Not only to, create a productive economy, but also to ensure that this country's inhabitants have a high standard of living. Some of these measurements that benefit both a higher standard of living as well as an efficient economy are literacy rates, employment of women, child mortality rates, as well as looking at other indexes such as the GINI index, which incorporates many of these other measurements and equates them into a measurement that will judge a country's overall quality of life. As we move further and we look at specific countries, let's first take a look at the United States. On paper in the United States, many do have access to proper resources, and these proper resources that everyone needs and should have are access to public education, free medical care through the government, and access to birth control and other contraceptives. This access to birth control and contraceptives can either be through your government medical care or through private organizations like Planned Parenthood. Due to the access of these contraceptives in American society, women tend to stay in school longer, which causes them to have a better education. And statistically, when people have a better education, they tend to have better mobility in the workforce. And having a better mobility in the workforce allows you to advance throughout the ranks of a corporation and create more wealth for yourself and gain more income. With this notion that keeping women in school longer, it will keep women in school longer, which will delay when they have children and the amount of children they have, which in turn will keep them employed and financially stable, which in turn boosts the economy, and it will also boost consumption because as aggregate income increases, so does consumption, exports, and taxes, which are all things necessary for benefiting the good of the total economy. So, in today's society, the media plays a massive role in our perception of other foreign countries across the globe. One country that is constantly stereotyped is Iran. The majority of Americans that you speak to are under this notion that Iran is this extremely malicious, aggressive country due to everything that we see on the news broadcasted about their nuclear enrichment facilities and their nuclear programs, as well as, the infamous nuclear deal with the United States. We also assume, due to its location in the Middle East, that there is this mass inequality towards women. In fact, that is not the case whatsoever. Women in Iran have the right to drive, in education, and to vote. And Iran is actually so progressive, in fact, that this country is known for having one of the best accesses to contraceptives in the whole world. And not just regular condoms, but IUDs, birth control pills, contraceptive rings, and even extremely discounted or free from the government vasectomies and tubectomies for men. This all started years ago when the population of Iran was growing way too quickly. And the government needed to do something about this, so they implemented many policies to hinder this population growth. And as we've learned, Malthus stated that if a population grows too quickly, the economy will in turn not be able to support it. When this population grows, it puts extreme pressure on the food supply of the country, as well as it will lower GDP per capita, because as you have more people, the GDP will be divided amongst more people. And it will also, so the Iranian government started to provide birth control to the general public for either extremely discounted costs or for free. And many people automatically assume that this progressive of an act would be contrary to the Islamic beliefs that are very prevalent throughout Iran. But the president at the time when they implemented this said that as long as the male in the relationship is aware that contraception is being used, as well as nobody is going to be harmed by said contraceptives, it will be acceptable, and it is no breach of Islamic law or religion. Statistically speaking, if fertility rates drop, as mentioned earlier, women will stay in school longer, allowing for more women to enter the workplace later on in life. They'll gain higher literacy rates, which will all in turn lead to better work for them, which has great effects such as a greater GDP for the country as they're making more income and can spend more, which is all fueled through more education and staying in school longer from these contraceptive measures. Now, as we look at the data for this topic, there are some specific figures to point out. In 1978, according to the World Bank data, only 23% of women ages 15 to 49 had accessed some form of contraceptive. This statistic peaked in 2005 when 78% of women 15 to 49 had accessed some form of birth control method. So as we look at these statistics, the analysis leads me to believe that the government implementing this policy was implemented perfectly and they saw exactly what they want. Women using contraceptives went up, and the amount of women using contraceptives were very high. Now, if we look at fertility rates in the year of 1978, which was the low year in contraceptive access that we mentioned earlier, the fertility rate was 6.354, meaning that the average woman was birthing around 6 kids. This fertility rate in 2005, which is when contraceptive use peaked, decreased down to 1.825, which is a significant change. Clearly, Iran's movement to slow population growth through the availability of contraception was working. Now, if we look at education rates in women, starting in the first year where the data was recorded, it was 1984. 74.4% of children enrolled in primary school were women. And this climbed up to 94% in 2005, which is also a significant increase, seeing that more women as time went on started to take place in school. Now, if we go to the workforce, in 1976, women made up only 16% of the workforce compared to men. And since the introduction of contraceptions, this number has increased all the way up to 25% in 2005, which is a quarter of the workforce is made up of women. Women having proper access to birth control has always been a topic of concern. When women decide to have children early, it affects the economy in numerous ways, as well as it has limits. And it limits their occupational mobility by causing them not to finish school and raise children, and instead taking employment, which will in turn boost overall employment within a country. As well, it will boost their overall income levels, which will lead to an increase in consumption, an increase in imports, an increase in taxes, which all benefit GDP and the overall economy. Now, with that being said, clearly birth control access is a staple to having a stable economy and a high quality of life within that country. Clearly, there are many other factors, but I do believe birth control in a country such as Iran is extremely needed to keep women in the workforce and employed and in school. And with that, my analysis of birth control and fertility rates in Iran is over. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation, and thank you for an awesome semester.